Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one. Billy the Kid, the most legendary outlaw of the Wild West, lived a brief but passionate romance with Paulita Maxwell, sister of one of his friends. In Fort Sumner, New Mexico, where Billy sought refuge, she let herself be won over by his rebellious charm and the dangerous aura surrounding him. Between secret meetings and the constant threat of the law, Paulita stayed by his side until the end. The relationship, lived under constant risk, made Paulita his greatest confidant, even as the noose around Billy tightened. In July of 1881, the ambush and death of Billy ended the romance, but not the legend. Rumors persisted that Paulita carried his child, forever fueling the mystery and passion surrounding one of the most legendary figures in the heart of the Wild West. Belle Starr, famous as the Bandit Queen, found in Sam Starr, a feared Cherokee outlaw, not only a partner in crime, but the great love of her life. They met in Indian Territory, where their immediate connection bound their lives and destinies. Together, they led stagecoach, train, and farm robberies, stole horses, and engaged in smuggling, openly defying authorities. The couple's reputation grew with each successful heist, turning them into living legends of the Wild West. Always impeccable in long dresses, adorned hats, and pistols at her waist, Belle was as feared as she was respected. At Sam's side, she turned their ranch into a strategic hub for outlaws, where lavish parties, music, and conspiracies blended into endless nights. Authorities and enemies feared her power and influence, but none succeeded in toppling her empire. This life of daring and complicity came to an end in 1886 with Sam's death, closing one of the most striking love and crime stories of the American West. In the heart of the Wild West, Pat Garrett, the sheriff who became a legend by hunting down and killing Billy the Kid, and Apolinaria Pauline Gutierrez, a courageous woman who stood by him during years of confrontations and uncertainty, lived together from 1880, raising 8 children and facing the dangers of the frontier. The striking portrait shows the couple side by side, a symbol of unwavering unity against outlaws. The curious fact is that around 1920, a rare image that circulates online immortalized Pauline, already aged, holding the gun Garrett used in the famous confrontation with Billy the Kid on the night of July 14, 1881, in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. It was in that duel, a quick and deadly ambush, that Garrett surprised Billy in the dark and killed him with a single shot, ending the manhunt that would make him one of the most legendary figures of the Wild West. Calamity Jane and Wild Bill Hickok were a legendary couple of the Wild West. He, a famous gunslinger with deadly precision. She, an untamed adventurous woman and a lover outside of marriage. In Deadwood, among smoky saloons and dusty streets, they lived an intense romance filled with constant risks and forbidden desire, surrounded by intrigue and the danger lurking around every corner of that town. In 1876, an ambush took Hickok's life, and Jane swore to love him until her last breath. Years later, a photograph of her at his grave immortalized this devotion, revealing a woman marked by an immeasurable passion. Even among doubts about the exact nature of their relationship, the legend of Jane and Hickok remains to this day as one of the most romantic and tragic tales of the West. Judge Roy Bean, known as the only law west of the Pecos, was an eccentric and relentless man in the Wild West. Owner of a saloon that also served as a courthouse, he administered justice in his own way, using a single law book and selecting jurors from among his customers. His sentences were as unusual as his past as an adventurer, smuggler, and survivor of duels. Among his many exploits, one of the most famous involved a train passenger who paid for a beer with a $20 gold coin. Bean refused to give change and fined him $19.95 for contempt of court, threatening to double the fine if he kept complaining. The man left, perplexed, and the story became legend. But despite his tough reputation, Roy harbored a platonic love for Lily Langtry, the British actress he never met. He named his saloon the Jersey Lily in her honor, wrote letters, and kept her portrait in a place of prominence. Upon learning of his devotion, Lily sent him an autographed photo that became his greatest treasure. Years after his death, she visited Langtry, forever marking a romance that lived only in his heart. In 1901, the feared outlaw Harry Sundance Kid, famous for daring train and bank robberies alongside Butch Cassidy's gang and the enigmatic Ethel Place, his loyal accomplice, who braved risky escapes and new beginnings in distant lands by his side, posed in a New York studio before embarking for Argentina with Butch Cassidy. He was impeccable in a top hat and formal suit, she in the elegant Gibson Girl style. Hunted by the feared Pinkerton agency, they lived a dangerous romance where each day could be the last. Crossing borders, using false identities, and enduring sleepless nights, they sustained a passion marked by crime, escapes, and secrets. The bond between them defied laws and distances, uniting them in a partnership where love was as intense as the risk they both faced. Doc Holliday, a dentist who traded his profession for the life of a gambler and gunslinger, and Mary Catherine Horney, the bold, big-nosed Kate, formed one of the most famous couples of the Wild West. She, a saloon dancer and occasional prostitute. He, a man marked by tuberculosis and violence. Their romance was intense, full of fights, reconciliations, and a loyalty that would withstand the dangers and instability of the frontier. Together in decisive moments, such as in the days leading up to the legendary gunfight at the OK Corral in 1881, Doc sided with the Earp brothers against the Clantons and McClorys, while Kate remained by his side. Through dramatic escapes, dangerous towns, and uncertain nights, the couple built a story marked by passion and complicity, entering the imagination of the West as a legendary pair, inseparable in the memory of those who relive that era. William Buffalo Bill Cody, hero of the Wild West and show business star, and Louisa Frederici, the woman who called him only Willie, lived a tumultuous relationship. They married in 1866, and while Bill traveled the world on tours that made him a legend, Louisa cared for the home and properties. Between rumors of infidelity, endless travels, and family tragedies, they faced deep crises and even attempts at divorce. But there was always reconciliation. Despite the conflicts, Louisa remained a steady figure, protecting the family land and name, while Buffalo Bill cultivated his fame on stages and arenas. A rare portrait of the couple in front of the Cody wagon immortalized Bill and the woman who anchored his life, two lovers who, despite everything, always returned to one another until they rested side by side at the end of their journey. Sam Bass, a train robber who became a legend in Texas, met Molly, a young woman whose face was never photographed, known only through the letters they exchanged. While the Texas Rangers hunted him, he wrote to Molly, promising to return. In July of 1878, in Round Rock, Bass was caught in a tragic ambush that sealed his fate. Jesse James and Zerelda Mims. James lived a love forged in the tension of the Wild West. She met him before he became the most feared outlaw in the country, and in 1874, they sealed their union in marriage. Between hurried escapes and secret reunions, Jesse always found in Zerelda a safe refuge. The couple lived between silent complicity and the constant threat of the law, keeping alive the flame of a forbidden romance. But in 1882, the home that sheltered their love became the scene of tragedy. While Jesse adjusted a picture on the wall, he was shot in the back by Robert Ford, a member of his own gang, before Zerelda's eyes. The shot not only killed the man, but forever destroyed the safe haven they had built. Zerelda carried the memory of an intense love, lived on the edge of the abyss, and ended by the bitterest of betrayals. Frank James, older brother of Jesse James, found in Annie Ralston James the safe harbor for a heart shaped by the life of an outlaw. They married in 1874, when he still rode alongside his brother, fleeing sheriffs and bounty hunters. Through ambushes and sleepless nights, Annie remained firm, sustaining the love that survived gunpowder and dust. In 1882, after his brother Jesse's death, Frank laid down his arms and surrendered to the law, trading the sound of gunfire for peaceful days with Annie. She guided him from violence to serenity, keeping alive the belief that love could redeem even the most marked of men. In their later years, they shared the steady rhythm of rocking chairs, he telling bloody memories, she listening with the same fascination of someone who never stopped loving him. John Wesley Hardin, one of the most feared gunslingers of the Wild West, already carried the shadow of more than 20 deaths when, in 1872, he married Jane Bowen. She had known him before his face appeared on wanted posters and his name became a saloon legend. Between imprisonments and daring escapes, Hardin lived the frontier life but always found his way back to his beloved, bringing with him spilled blood and the unmistakable scent of gunpowder. Jane was the woman who dared to love the man everyone feared. She raised their children alone while Hardin lived on the edge of the law, waiting for the day he would put down his gun to be only her husband. But that day never came, and in 1895, Hardin was shot to death in a saloon in El Paso, taken by surprise from behind. For Jane, all that remained was the memory of the man whom, despite all his sins, she loved until her last breath. George Armstrong Custer and Elizabeth Libby Bacon. Custer lived a love shaped by war and distance. He, a charismatic and fearless general, went on risky military campaigns, aware that each battle could be his last. She, faithful and passionate, anxiously awaited the letters sent from the front, filled with tenderness and uncertainty. The couple grew stronger even when apart, living between military duty and conjugal devotion. In 1876, Custer died at Little Bighorn, leaving Libby widowed at 34 years old. Turning pain into purpose, she dedicated nearly 6 decades to preserving her husband's memory, traveling the country and writing books that praised his deeds. She refused to remarry, keeping alive the name of the man she loved until the end. Her loyalty became legend, immortalizing not only the general, but also the story of an unshakable love. Lottie Dino, a legendary professional gambler known for her elegance and cool demeanor at the card table, made a name for herself in the most sought-after saloons of Texas. It was in one of these saloons that she met Frank Thurmond, a charismatic gambler who quickly caught her attention. Amid poker tables filled with drinks, bold bets, and exchanged glances under the dim light of oil lamps, the two joined their lives and destinies, moving through frontier towns and crowded saloons. Pearl Hart, the Canadian woman who defied the rules of the Wild West by dressing as a man to ride and carry weapons without raising suspicion, went down in history as the Bandit Queen. In 1899, she robbed a stagecoach in Arizona, and reports of the time mention that she had a romantic partner who helped her commit the crime. Captured and imprisoned in Yuma, she maintained complete silence about him. This is the first wealthiest black family in the United States, formed by Junius G. Groves and his wife, Matilda. Junius was born enslaved in 1859 in Kentucky, and after gaining freedom during the Great Exodus to Kansas, began life with almost nothing. Alongside Matilda, he started by cultivating only 9 leased acres, overcoming obstacles through hard work. In 1884, the couple bought their first 80 acres, paving the way for an agricultural empire. With vision and perseverance, they expanded their land until they owned 2,000 acres, becoming a symbol of prosperity. They built a 22-room mansion and raised 12 children, keeping the family united. Junius always credited his success to the tireless dedication of his love, Matilda, and their 12 children. Kit Carson, the legendary explorer and official guide of the Wild West, found in Josefa Jaramillo the love of his life. They met in Taos, New Mexico, where Josefa's beauty and determination won the heart of the man who explored inhospitable territories and faced constant risks in the name of his mission. Despite cultural differences, the couple joined forces against the dangers of the frontier. Josefa, resilient and proud of her roots, became his inseparable partner and mother of his children. Out of devotion to his beloved, Carson learned Spanish to communicate with her and her family. Eleanor Dumont, the famous Madame Moustache, was the owner of the elegant 21 Saloon in Nevada City, California, a renowned gathering place for prostitutes and adventurers. Skilled in poker, she managed her business with charm and firmness. There, she met a young gambler whose charisma quickly seduced her. Together, they became involved in a painful passion until his gambling addiction led him to lose everything. Ruined, he abandoned her, leaving Eleanor alone, in debt, and with a broken heart. Lou Graham, a bold businesswoman and owner of a luxurious saloon in Seattle at the end of the 19th century, built her fortune by attracting influential clients from politicians to magnates. Intelligent and charismatic, she used the sophisticated atmosphere to cultivate discreet romances. Among them, it was said she had a strong attachment to Judge Thomas Burke, a prominent figure in the city, with whom she shared private dinners and long conversations by candlelight. John Ross, the influential Cherokee chief, was known for his strict laws prohibiting marriages between women of his tribe and white men. But fate led him to challenge his own rule when he met Mary Bryan Stapler, a young white woman from Delaware. The romance began in silence, nurtured by letters sent from Washington, where Ross served as the Cherokee political representative to the United States government, defending the rights of his people. The passion endured cultural and political barriers until, in 1844, they married publicly, facing harsh criticism and tensions from both sides. The union took place in the midst of disputes between native nations and the American government over land and sovereignty. Together, Ross and Mary formed a couple who lived their love in one of the most turbulent times in the history of the Wild West. In this photograph, a Navajo man and a white woman pose side by side in a photography studio in the Wild West. He, a Native American, wears traditional ceremonial attire representing his cultural heritage. She, his white wife, wears a Western blouse and dark skirt. The couple revealed an intimate and quiet connection between two completely different cultures, remaining together in harmony into old age. In the mid-19th century, several black people lived with relative freedom in the border regions of the former Mexican territory, now belonging to the United States. In these regions, Spanish-speaking communities formed by black people, Native Americans, and Mexican natives united through marriage and created a culture of diverse traditions. In this 1887 photograph, a buffalo soldier poses with his native wife from the Mojave tribe, a union of two historically marginalized peoples at the edges of the Wild West. After emancipation, many formerly enslaved people sought to formalize unions that had been denied to them for years. In this photograph, dated around 1870, another buffalo soldier also poses with his wife. Charles Meehan, a white Irishman, and Hester, a black Canadian woman, were both born in 1856 and met as children in the settlement of Elgin, Ontario. By the age of 8, they had already formed a deep bond that would withstand the test of time. In 1875, they married, and after suffering a racist incident in Chatham, they decided to migrate with other black settlers to Nebraska in search of new opportunities and land of their own. Around 1870, when interracial marriage was accepted only in the northern United States, this rare portrait showed an elegant African-American woman alongside her white husband. With their arms touching and their gaze steady, they displayed a dangerous love that, if lived in the South, could have cost them their freedom or even their lives. Wyatt Earp and Josephine Sadie Earp formed one of the most famous couples of the Wild West, united both by history and legend. In this photo, they appear relaxed, revealing the intimacy built over decades together after leaving the frontier. Josephine met Wyatt in 1881 when she was still living with Sheriff Johnny Behan, and soon began a lasting relationship with him. Together for about 40 years, they moved from city to city, engaged in business ventures, and traveled across the West, standing side by side in moments of prosperity and hardship. Josephine remained with Wyatt until his death, defending his memory and helping to shape her husband's legendary image. Frank Butler, a renowned shooting champion, met Annie Oakley in 1881 when he challenged her to a competition, confident he would win easily. To his surprise, Annie demonstrated flawless skill and defeated him. But at that moment, he found more than a rival. He discovered the woman who would change his life. They married around 1876 and joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West as Butler and Oakley, taking daring performances to stages across the United States and Europe that captivated crowds. For nearly 50 years, they shared travels, stages, and challenges together. When Annie died in 1926, Frank, devastated by the loss, did not survive and passed away only 18 days later. Bat Masterson, the elegant gunslinger and sheriff who built his fame in bloody duels on the dusty streets of frontier towns, found in Emma Walter, a stage performer and free-spirited woman, an unlikely love that defied destiny. Known for his skill with a revolver and a life of adventures and dangers, he left behind saloons, outlaw hunts, and tempestuous romances to reinvent himself in New York, working as a writer and newspaper editor. Emma was the woman who transformed his life, offering him a home and the peace he had never known. By her side, Bat traded gunfights for work in a newsroom in New York. Together, they built a story of loyalty, remaining united for more than 30 years until Bat died in 1921. Years later, Emma was buried beside him, eternally sealing in the ground the story of a love that became legend. William Bronco Bill Irving, the official interpreter of the Sioux and a notable figure in Buffalo Bill's 1887 shows, lived an intense romance that defied the cultural barriers of the time. He married Ella Bennett, daughter of the Lakota chief Rocky Bear, at a time when interethnic unions were targets of prejudice and segregation. Their story stood out not only for their love, but also for their boldness in facing social judgment. In preserved photographs, Bronco Bill appears alongside Ella and their son Benny. He wears a wide-brimmed hat, a beaded vest, a dress shirt, a belt with a holster, and a pistol, representing the essence of the Wild West. Ella, in a traditional suede dress with fringes and fine embroidery, carried the strength and pride of her native heritage. Charles and Carolyn Ingalls were symbols of love and courage in the Wild West. They married in 1860 and set out to build a life together in the harsh and uncertain setting of westward expansion in America. He, an untiring adventurer, sought new lands and opportunities. She, a firm and resilient teacher, secured the home even under the most severe conditions of that time. Through storms, harsh winters, and long journeys in search of a place to settle, the couple established themselves in different parts of the frontier, moving through Wisconsin, Kansas, Minnesota, and South Dakota. In these lands, they raised their children with values of work, faith, and perseverance. Their story, immortalized in the writings of their daughter, Laura Ingalls Wilder, became a faithful record of the pioneer families who forged the American West. Wya, also known as Toby Riddle, was a woman from the Modoc tribe who made history in the Wild West for her role in war. In this 1873 photograph, she appears alongside her husband, Frank Riddle. During the conflict between the Modoc and the United States Army, Wya served as the official interpreter, being one of the few Native women to hold such a position in military negotiations. In April of 1873, during peace negotiations, Toby warned authorities of a possible planned attack, preventing a tragedy. For her heroic act, she received a military pension, something extremely rare for Native women. But her greatest challenge remained in the heart. She married Frank Riddle, a white settler from Kentucky who had arrived during the gold rush. They settled near the Modoc family in the Lost River area and had a son named Jefferson C. Davis Riddle in honor of the general who ended the war. During the attack on Fort Parker in 1836, Cynthia Ann Parker, only 9 years old, was captured by Comanche natives after her family was killed in the raid. Raised as a member of the tribe, she learned their language, customs, and traditions. Years later, she married Chief Peta Nocona, forming a respected union among the Comanche. Together they had children, including Quanah Parker, a future leader of native resistance in the Wild West. Cynthia's life changed tragically in 1860 when she was captured by authorities and taken back to Anglo-American society. Separated from her husband and children, she refused to abandon her Comanche identity, rejecting adaptation to white customs. Consumed by longing and loss, she lived in deep sorrow. She died about 10 years later, becoming a symbol of loyalty and love for her adopted people. Jim Bridger was a famous hunter and explorer of the Wild West, known for his alliances with various native tribes. His first love was his wife, Cora Insala, daughter of Chief Insala of the Flathead Nation. Jim likely met Cora and developed a close relationship with her family. They had 3 children, but in 1845, during the harsh winter at Fort Bridger, Wyoming, Cora died shortly after the birth of their 3rd child. After the death of his first wife, Jim married a young woman from the Ute tribe who also died during childbirth. After losing his second wife, Jim Bridger married a 3rd time to Mary Wasaki, daughter of Shoshone Chief Washakie. However, in 1857, Mary also died during childbirth with their 2nd child. Jim was on one of his expeditions in the West and only learned of her death when he returned home in July of 1858. This is the first known romantic portrait of an interracial couple in the United States, showing a white woman and a mixed-race black man exchanging a series of intimate gestures. It is estimated to have been taken between 1850 and 1855, most likely in some northern state, at a time when laws prohibited such unions. Dora Dufran, a famous Madam of Deadwood, began her life as a prostitute and quickly built her own empire in the city's saloons. A close friend of Calamity Jane, she found in the legendary Richard Clark Deadwood Dick, a protector and lover. Together they faced the harsh reality of the frontier, and even without a formal marriage, they were seen as an inseparable couple, united by loyalty, passion, and an intense life. Sarah Winnemucca, also known as Sarah Winnemucca, was a northern Paiute woman. The daughter of Chief Winnemucca, she was born into a leadership family that sought peace with white settlers. Her first love was a former United States Army lieutenant named Edward Bartlett. The marriage, filled with tensions between opposite worlds, did not survive and ended in a troubled divorce. In 1881, while working as an inspector of Shoshone prisoners at the Vancouver Barracks, Sarah met Lieutenant Lewis H. Hopkins, an employee of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They fell in love, uniting in a romance surrounded by judgment and distrust between their peoples. The relationship collapsed when Lewis began spending all of Sarah's money, jeopardizing her projects and stability. In this photograph, taken between 1889 and 1900 in El Reno, Oklahoma, an interracial couple poses in a photography studio of the time. Their posture does not hide the bond between them, a connection that, in the context of the Oklahoma Land Run, meant facing cultural barriers and the disapproval of many. In this photograph, we see Joseph Nicholas and his family, members of the Penobscot tribe from Old Town, Maine, posing in front of a tent. Joseph, wearing a feathered headdress and ceremonial attire, represents the culture of his people, who have inhabited the region for centuries along the Penobscot River. The union took place in a context in which interracial relationships were the target of strong criticism and social restrictions. Ella Mae Clemens and Wong Soon Yue were a couple who, in the early 20th century, lived a romance prohibited by California law. At the time, the state banned interracial marriages, making it impossible to legalize their union. Determined to be together between 1906 and 1915, they traveled to the state of Washington, where the law allowed marriage between people of different backgrounds, and there they married officially. Upon returning to San Francisco, they consolidated not only their marriage, but also a working life together. They ran the store Relics Dug from the Ruins, specializing in souvenirs and photographic postcards. Proud of their story, they sold images of themselves as a couple in an era when exposing such a relationship was seen as an affront to state laws. Amache, also known as Ameotzihe, was the daughter of Chief Ochine of the Cheyenne Nation, and in 1861 married John Wesley Prowers, a shrewd and influential trader in Colorado. In a time marked by hostilities between native peoples and settlers, their marriage became a rare and valuable link amid the territorial disputes of the era. Settled in the Arkansas Valley, they built a legacy together. John prospered as a farmer and trader, while Amache preserved and passed on the customs of her people, keeping Cheyenne influence alive in the community. Their home became a meeting point of cultures where trade, diplomacy, and tradition blended, reflecting the strength of this unique union. Between 1889 and 1907, in Nowata, in an Indian territory, an interracial couple posed with their 2 children for traveling photographer Oscar Drum. Dressed in formal clothing, the couple symbolized the union of cultures in a region marked by tensions and alliances between natives and settlers. John C. Fremont, the daring explorer who blazed trails to the west and a senator for the abolitionist cause, and Jessie Benton, daughter of the influential Thomas Hart Benton, united in a love that began in secret, defying her father's authority and challenging 19th century conventions. Amid the glory of the conquest of California, the founding of the Republican Party, and the fight against slavery, they formed a legendary couple who turned ambition into mission and passion into a force capable of reshaping the destiny of the American nation. Sacagawea was a young native woman who is believed to have been kidnapped and sold as the second wife to fur trader Toussaint Charbonneau. Over time, she came to love him and, alongside him, guided explorers Lewis and Clark in the historic Northwest Expedition, using her knowledge of the land and languages to open routes that would change the destiny of the United States.